In the novel The Time Traveler's Wife, written by Audrey Niffenegger, our main characters Claire and Henry have to go through an unusual and difficult life to keep their love intact. Henry met Claire when he was in his 40s and she was a little girl. This might seem weird at first, but Henry was born a time traveler. He disappears and travels to other places randomly, sometimes into the future and sometimes into the past, but he is unable to control where he goes. When he disappears, it could be for minutes, days, or years. When Henry was mid-aged, he would time travel a lot to Claire's house, and she would sneak out to see him. She was only a little girl, but she grew up with him. They didn't see each other often, so she had to wait for him to come back. They ended up meeting in the present and falling in love and getting married. So while reading this book, I noticed a common theme that people can relate to is when should you think with your head versus thinking with your heart when it comes to love? When is it time to be realistic about what's going on versus letting your emotions take over? In the story, Henry knows that the relationship with Claire is toxic. He knows that he is constantly hurting her by randomly disappearing, and that she is constantly worried about if he'll come home. He knows that there is a huge possibility that Claire would be much happier with a normal man who will always be there for her, yet he stays with her because he doesn't want to lose her. When is that being selfish versus actually being in love? Sometimes in the real world, if someone does not think a relationship will last, they might keep it to themselves and stay in the relationship if that means that they won't be hurting the other person's feelings, or even if they simply are just comfortable in the situation. I know that I, personally, will keep things to myself to not hurt others. I am the kind of person who always puts everyone else before myself instead of thinking about how I feel. From past experiences, this has only negatively impacted me because I always end up upset and I don't tell anyone. This is something I would love to work on changing about myself. In the novel, Henry is always considering how much better off Claire would be if she was not with him. She could live her own life without constantly having to stress about him. Except he never tells her that because he loves her and wants to stay with her. He doesn't think that he will find someone who loves him as much as she does. Sometimes people are in love and yet the positives simply outweigh the negatives. Love is about taking the good with the bad. Yet sometimes the negatives outweigh the positives and everyone is just afraid to say how they really feel. Sometimes it is hard to walk away, and if the negatives are truly harmful to a person's well-being, then he or she should walk away. Claire also states how difficult it is being with Henry, which makes you wonder if it is worth the struggle for their love or if she just does not want to lose him. Key factors to take into consideration when thinking about this is age, stability, time, and dedication. The stability of the relationship between them is important because if they did not feel as strong as they did, they would not have gone through the struggle to make it work. They both show that they are extremely dedicated to each other by how much they put up with. Claire will be alone in her apartment sometimes weeks before Henry will show up, and yet she still sticks around and waits for him because she loves him. Though age is not an issue for people in these situations today, spouses of military personnel have to experience the same sort of waiting game, but they do it because the good outweigh the bad. In present time, Henry and Claire are only 8 years apart, which is not bad except sometimes Claire sees Henry when he is time traveling from different eras. He can travel to the future and the past, but present time is what real time is today. I personally think that Claire may have put up with more than she should have in the novel. I think if I was in her situation, I would not go through all that stress, and I would focus on my own happiness. As much as I enjoyed the relationship between Henry and Claire, maybe they should have been more realistic about the situation in the beginning instead of constantly stressing. I think Henry should have let her go and not have gotten so involved in the situation. I think he was too worried about having something stable for him for once, considering he has been time traveling his whole life. Nothing has been stable for him. In the real world, I think people should strongly consider all the positives and negatives in their relationship with others. They should make sure that there are more positives for both of them to continue a healthy relationship.